I've met a lot of you, but the exciting thing about these is I always get to meet brand new faces, and there's a lot of new ones. So I'll take just a couple of seconds to tell you who I am. So I'm Kendra Skeene. I've been working here with GeorgiaGov Interactive for about 9 years. So at this point, I'm the director of product, which means I oversee the platform that a lot of you are on, a lot of you are not. And so as part of that, I look at overall what we need to be adding to it, enhancing, what we need to be fixing, how we can help you guys. So I oversee our training, our support, and our testing efforts as well, which is fantastic, right? It means that I get a really good picture of that whole ecosystem of everything that we're all trying to do and figure out how to make all those pieces fit together so we can all build each other up and make each other stronger with all of our ideas. I'm also well aware that I'm standing between you and lunch. So I hope you will forgive me that I'm going to start out talking to you about bananas. Sorry. Or rather, how a banana gets from a tree in Honduras to your kitchen. So as recently as the 1950s even, everything that we shipped from one location to another was done by hand. And it was done in these, bushels of bananas going from one place to the next to the next. It was terribly inefficient, right? People would have to load and unload all of these things, bananas, cattle hides, fish meal, cotton, all from one ship. I want to say again, I mentioned cattle hides. I'm talking like just raw cattle hides. Just pick them up. Let's move them to the next location. Disgusting. True story, right? These would all be loaded in different sacks and boxes, or not even, right? And our bananas here, off of trains and ships and trucks, all by hand. Imagine the time and effort that it would take for crews of workers to move bushels of bananas, right? Boxes of cotton, packages of animal hides. Workers had to pack each bag and box into these ships individually. So even with 50 to 100 people working, it would take weeks to unload one ship and load it into the train and then, right, repeat. Now you have to reload that ship so it can move on to its next place. So once it reached its destination, you had to move it off of that ship and onto individual train cars to be loaded to trucks to be transported to a final destination. All of this horribly slow and inefficient. We're talking about a lot of manual labor and a lot of time. I can only imagine the quality of the bananas were kind of questionable by the time they made it to their final destination, right? Not to mention those disgusting animal hides. You had boxes of, bottles of whiskey breaking. I think like 30% of the whiskey shipments would just be lost between breakage and people swiping them as they went. True story. So, in fact, approximately 30% of a product's price was purely in shipping costs in this method, right? The standardization of shipping containers, that changed everything. Everything. When your shipping containers were standardized to all be the same size, and the transportation modes were built in to conform to all these standard size, so your containers could connect to your ships, to your trains, to your trucks, all the way across this whole destination, it really cut down on the time that it took. And think of it again, that quality, right? Moving from one place to the next. So from a truck to a ship, to a train, to a store, all remarkably quickly. So before containers, 30% of a product's price was just in those shipping costs. Now it's less than 1%. Standardization changed everything. We have goods that we could never have because some really brave people spent 10 years arguing over all the little bits and pieces of how these shipping containers would function so that it could work between all of these different modes of transportation. Amazing. I'm so glad I wasn't one of those people spending 10 years on that. All right, what does that have to do with my website, right? When it comes to our information, our content, we are still largely in that pre-standards era. So we don't have flat HTML pages anymore, right? Mostly. Most of us don't have just individually hand-coded HTML pages for all of our pages, but we used to. And we still have a lot of PDFs that just all of our information is in PDFs that we upload and expect someone to go and find. So talk about the stone ages of our standardization of our information. This is the least efficient way to get your information to your constituents. At least now we've mostly modernized to a CMS, right? So most of our content is stored in databases of some sort. But we're still storing blobs of content in that CMS. So there's not in a standardized way, they're not structured, we're just throwing it all in there, right? Putting it all together in this one big WYSIWYG field. These are not the kind of blobs that can easily be moved to your calendar, right? Or to a map, to a watch, to voice commands, or ultimately even to a shiny new CMS that's being built from the ground up to be able to use in the future with new features and flexibility. So what does make that information easy to ship, right? How do we make our information easier to move from one thing to the next? Well, that's where structured content comes in, and structured content is what is easier to ship to all of these different channels and all these different destinations that we've been talking about. That's breaking it up into discrete chunks, right? Structuring it based on the kind of information that it is. This idea isn't new, right? This is where content types come in, and anyone who's been on our platform has been using content types for years. But just like in shipping, you need a different type of container for your bananas, right, than you do for cars. You need a different type of container for your milk, for your oil. Please don't confuse the oil and the milk containers. And for cattle, right? So we have the right type of container for the type of information, the type of content that we're carrying from one place to the next. On our platform, that looks like our content types. So our events, our blogs, our locations, our profiles, all of those have a different way, they're different types of information, so we have a different way of chunking them and segmenting them and displaying them on your websites or your calendars or whatever comes next, right? So for example, let's take it from the beginning to the end here. If you put your events in its appropriate container, we're able to port that information to your homepage. So, I don't know if it's going to work here. My title is going to go here on the homepage. My address or my time, date, that's going to go here. And so regardless of how I put it in here, as long as I have all the information, it's going to map exactly where it needs to go on my homepage blog. That exact same information will move where it needs to go on my events listing blog. Exact same, it's going to go where it needs to go on that detail page, right? So that same address information gives me the location information here. It also will map it out for me. That same title goes to all these different places, all these different styles and formats depending on what page is displayed on and what we need. It also all goes into an Add to Calendar button that goes right to your Google Calendar or your Outlook calendar if you choose to download it there, right? I put it in once. We ship it to 5 different locations, all just like that. All right. But the events functionality isn't new, right? We've had this exact same functionality for all of you for 4 years. A lot of you don't have events, though, so it's not really relevant to you. It's not something that you need. What's fantastic, though, about something like events, right, is that even though it hasn't changed, that functionality is portable because it's chunked into small pieces of information. So this past spring, I told you that we were working on some features that would really help expand your mapping options and also that would help with your layout flexibility. These were pain points that we'd heard a lot people needed to be able to do, and we're building out what comes next. So now I do want to talk to you about some of these things that we've just launched, and because they are really good examples of chunking content and how chunking your information allows us to ship it to a lot of different places, a lot of different ways. It also is a great example of the benefits of a shared platform, right? We have a couple of agencies that say, hey, we could really use a different way to map out our locations, and I can aggregate those pain points and those needs from multiple agencies and make sure that we're meeting all of your needs at once, and we're all able to benefit from everybody's needs, right? So let me tell you what's new for those office locations. This is what we did about a year and a half ago, where we have these chunks that we're requiring, right? So location name, location type, areas served, and address. You'll see how these chunk to or go to the different places on a listing page. And with just this data, we could break it down by the type of location and allow for some simple sorts and filters. We did that a while back. We can also display detailed information and mapping for each location. So that same data goes to a detailed page, again, displaying it however it needs to. We had the map at the bottom of the page, and that was taking up too much space, so we moved it up and kind of adjusted. But you put your information into one field, and we can adjust the display for everybody to make it easier to access, right? So this is what we've recently launched, and we're going to have some training at the end of the month, or I think the beginning of December, for anyone who's interested in learning more about it. These locations have gotten a major upgrade. So we can take that same information and we create new mapping and listing pages based on that same data that we had before. We've also added automatic geolocation. So when a citizen pulls something up on their phone and they say, yes, we want to allow, this website to know my location data, it can tell me which locations are near me. So we're starting to make that more personalized, right? We've also added in this services offered, because not everyone has just one type of location. Some of the times we have different types or different services we're offering at these locations. So now we can even filter out and say, well, just show me the locations that offer this kind of exam. Just show me the locations that do this for me, that are near me, because that's what I need. I don't need to know the list of every location throughout all of Georgia that offers this service. I need to know which one near me offers this service, right? Let's get down to brass tacks here. Finally, we're going a step further in how we mark up that information sort of behind the scenes so that Google and Bing and Facebook can get that information more easily and more succinctly, and they can get your office hours and they can get your phone numbers and be able to display that where they need to as well. So we're trying to make this as easy for everyone to get to as humanly possible. So now if you have office locations, right, out there in the real world that people need to get to, you kind of have two options. You can stick with your blobs that you've been using because that's all you had before. It was just a site page that you put everything in and spent all the time organizing. You can keep it that way. Or you can convert them to these chunks of information that are easily consumed across devices and services that we can continue to expand on. We are ridiculously, absurdly eager to get all of you started with this. For anybody who is not using locations, but who has office locations. And so one thing that we've invested in is an ability to aggregate a spreadsheet of data, right, of chunks, to automatically create all of those location pages for you. So by all means, anyone who's interested, I saw a couple of eyes perk up when I said that. All you have to do is fill out a spreadsheet, right? You probably have a spreadsheet somewhere of your locations. We just need to clean it up and get the information in the right format. And we can import all of that, and it'll automatically create the pages for you. And then we'll help you set up each listing or display page, what you need, where you need it. We have a manual to help you do it yourself. We're offering the locations webinar at the end of December. Feel free to sign up. I think we're going to try to record that for anyone who can't make that option. And we also, again, this one's sort of it needs a little bit of help, especially if you're doing the imports. So reach out to any one of us, open a support ticket, and we can get that conversation started on how to get you set up with locations. All right, so that's great, but what about my regular site pages, right? Most of my pages are site pages. What do I do with those? Well, this is the other exciting thing that we've been talking about, is how we're able to chunk up your site pages a little more. Because site pages, for all of its options already of ways to chunk and structure that content, they're notoriously your home for big blobs of information, right? I've got a place that I can upload files, but it's at the bottom of the page. It's not displayed the way that I would like it to in context within the rest of my page, so I don't use it, right? And the same with our related links. Everyone's like, yeah, no, I don't use it. It's not where I want it to be. It doesn't make sense in my layout. So this has been a pain point that we've been struggling with for years, right? Is yes, we can structure it, but the layout doesn't fit how we're trying to communicate the page. So what do? Right? What we do right now is we just try to sort of organize it in a big blob of information. And that's basically what everybody's pages look like right now. I'm not trying to ding anybody, right? We do the same thing. We're doing what we have to do to get what we need on these pages. What I am saying is that now we're trying to address a lot of those issues for you and make it easier for you to chunk and display your information. And so that's where we have this new feature called columns. Columns are going to be on your site pages and your blog pages, and you don't have to do anything different with your normal pages of content. You can just keep, using your normal site pages as they are, but whenever you have information that needs to be a little more chunked or you need separate columns of information, That's where you can use the column section. So I want to talk you through a little bit of this. We've got a few different ways that you can chunk out and display that information. So we've got related links. Instead of just displaying those related links at the bottom of the page, it can be anywhere within the page and as many related links as you need to. So you can maintain those connections to existing pages on your site. You can add an image, and by adding that image anywhere on the page, instead of within your WYSIWYG, if you actually use the add an image, it's going to make sure that it is responsive, right? It's going to resize appropriately based on the content. We've got accessibility baked in, and it's going to help you with your performance for your page load because it's going to resize based on the device that you're using. Video, again, structured, responsive video that will resize based on the device that somebody's using instead of just trying to embed a YouTube video in the middle of your page. Our infographic tool is great for anyone who is using infographics because it allows you to, when you're on a mobile device, you can click on it and it sort of lets you pinch and zoom on that infographic, which previously within the rest of the platform, we can't pinch and zoom on an image on your phone. But with the infographic option, you can. And then related files. This one I feel like is the hugest pain point that most of our agencies have is you have so many files, they have to be organized on your page, and it's hard to sort of maintain those connections to the PDFs that are located somewhere else on your site. These related files will allow you to more accurately control lists of files on your page. And yes, it's called columns because you can put it in more than one column, right? So those of you that have 3-column tables just because you need to be able to put things in columns and you're not supposed to use tables for just lists of information, but you do because you want them in columns, right? Now we've got columns. I do want to caution you though, because this is what you all are going to do. You say, yes, this is awesome. I'm going to I can do 4 columns. Let me just see what happens when I do 4 columns. I know because I did the same thing, right? But just because you have the option for multiple columns, it doesn't mean you're going to need multiple columns. A lot of times you won't. A lot of times it will be really helpful to use this functionality to chunk things in a single column all the way down. But when you have these smaller bits of information, again, there's the options for different column layouts. To give you some ideas of what this might look like, here's one example, right? So I can have video, and again, that's going to resize based on the device. I can have columns for different photos instead of just one big photo across. Here's an example of a page before, right? This is our normal unstructured. All of this is in the WYSIWYG all at once. If I convert that to a column layout, I have better control over how that image interacts with the text. I can actually create 3 columns for contacts instead of trying to throw it all into a table. And instead of just linking up these PDFs within the page that we're going to forget are there later and we're going to link to the old version and we're going to, lose trust, we're able to control that a little bit better so you have a good understanding of where those documents are so you can update them later. And again, remember, this is responsive. So that 3-column, table that I put in there for the desktops, that 3 columns totally gets messed up if I'm using a table when I am looking at it on a mobile device. But Columns doesn't forget that you have 50% of your users looking at this on a mobile device. Columns is going to resize that page when someone's looking at it on a smaller device instead of just sticking with whatever you did when you were designing for the desktop. Some other examples. Here's a before and after of another one of our agencies playing around with some options. So here's the existing page, and here's how we can lay this out afterwards to make better use of that space. Previously, we had this huge list of pages to link off to because we know we're not supposed to have tables for lists. But with columns, I can do a 4-column list when it makes sense to have 4 columns and link off to everything. So again, this is something we're really excited about. It's brand new, and it's going to take some time to figure out when you need it and when you don't. But we're happy to help. So we already had a columns webinar. If we hear enough feedback that people are interested in another webinar, we'll hold it again. We do have a manual online, And of course, you can always just test things out in draft mode and see what works for you and what doesn't, and then publish when you're ready. So I also just highly encourage, just play around and see what works, right? See what you can do. Okay, but let's face it, right? Your website is of no use to anybody if it doesn't contain good, healthy, nourishing bananas. Content. That's what this is all about, right? I can build some awesome containers, but if the content, right, if the bananas are mushy, it doesn't matter how awesome my container is. So our hope is as we continue to improve the way we help you structure your information and the containers that we store that in, its usefulness and effectiveness will also improve. And our goal is that we can help you ship that information more efficiently, more effectively to all the devices and the people who need it. And we're going to work to set up the best way to get your bananas to your hungry citizens. But it is up to you to produce the good bananas. This afternoon, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into that idea. So we've got Johan's going to talk to us about your data as content and how to make sure that data is in the right format and healthy and fresh and pure so that we can visualize it. And then April's going to really talk to you about maturing your content strategy and making sure that what we're writing for our constituents is what they need, so we're shipping the right things. Remember, we also post news and updates to our blog weekly. All sorts of fun stuff's on there. We do send out those email newsletters. We try to make sure we keep you in the loop about what's coming and when it's coming and what we're doing with it, and provide all the training and support that you need to get you there. So be sure to not delete the newsletters as soon as they come in. Skim them first. All right, thank you all for your time.